The lazy September summer days and Indian summer on the Missouri was anything but lazy, but you might say they were indeed an Indian summer. What a way to end a summer exploration trip. Yep, the Discovery team was about to run into a real Indian summer all right, but it's too bad it wasn't the hot fall weather, but real down-home, hostile Indians. By September 23rd, the men had traveled 1,600 weary miles with God's blessing and protection. The only man that had died, as you recall, was Sergeant Floyd of an appendicitis attack. But now, they were in the dangerous territory of the Teton Sioux, near where the Teton River meets the wide Missouri in South Dakota. These Teton Sioux were real scoundrels, all right. Captain Lewis and Clark were warned of them before leaving St. Louis, so they were prepared for what was about to happen. September 23rd, 3 Indian teenage boys swam across the river as daredevils, seeing how close they could get to the keelboat and teasing the white men. Captain Lewis invited them aboard instead of running them off and gave them words to give back to their village chiefs, arranging for a council fire the next day. The Teton Sioux were river pirates, stealing whatever could come up river, sending the boats back to St. Louis empty-handed and taking all the plunder. Captain Clark was an expert Indian fighter, and he knew how to handle this problem. That night, the boat was anchored midstream, and Captain Clark ordered, "Sergeant Ordway, you take 15 men ashore and post a guard tonight. Keep a sharp eye out for Indians' surprise attack by night. The rest of us will get our sleep aboard boat here." "Yes, Captain." Ordway left, and all went well that night. The next morning, the Indians came in pouring like bees to a honey hive. The captains made a council fire and began to see what the Indians would require in trade goods to let them continue upstream. Captain Clark gave them blankets and coats, trinkets, and peace medals, and gave them great speeches about the Great White Father. But the Indians rose and told the captains, "You, too cheap. You no pass up river." It was decided by the Indian chiefs Black Buffalo and Two Bears to give the white men a real good old-fashioned Indian welcome. About 6 p.m., the chiefs sent for Captains Lewis and Clark to be carried into their village. This was a trick, though. They figured the men would all sleep in the village, and by night, they'd sneak in to their boats and steal all the plunder. As they were carried into the Indian village, the music started, the women and the men doing their tribal dancing. There was great celebration going on. The men were fed from 400 pounds of buffalo meat as well as deer and elk and dog meat. Yes, dog meat. The Indians loved it. And believe it or not, many of the white men from that day on began to prefer dog meat over wild game. Anyway, the trick didn't work. The captains decided to leave about 12 p.m. and go back to the boat to sleep. The next morning, the chiefs came down with their warriors, and the chiefs called out across the river, "Yo! You white man! You no leave, you cheap! We want more!" Captain Clark went ashore and said, "Look, chiefs, you're not gonna get anything else. We've given you enough, and we're leaving now." As Captain Clark started to leave, the Indian warriors grabbed the canoe rope and wouldn't let him leave. Captain Lewis aboard the keelboat midstream told 12 of his men to jump aboard and wade across with their guns to assist Clark. Meanwhile, he loaded the 2 cannons aboard the boat and told the chiefs, "You chiefs, you listen to white men. We have great white father in Washington. He have large army, and he will kill you all. We have a small army here. We cannot fight you all. You will more than likely kill us. But it'll cost you your life and the life of many of your tribe." It was silent for a moment. After the chiefs talked, they let the white men go. The strong action taken by Lewis and Clark broke the spirit of the Teton Sioux, And from that day on, the Indians no longer robbed the traders going north on the Missouri. This reminds me of a story. During my junior high days in Santa Monica, California, I had just about as much problems as Lewis and Clark had with the Teton Sioux. It seemed that the junior high school had a group of scoundrels that would try to take your lunch and lunch money every day. You might say they were school pirates. If you gave in to them, it cost you your lunch money. And not only your money and your lunch, not one day, but every day from that day on. I saw kids giving in every day, and I felt sorry for them. Then the day came for me to get picked on. Now I was in the 7th grade. I knew deep down inside I'd have no respect if I gave in. But was I willing to punch it out for a bologna sandwich? Well, I chose to punch it out. After standing my ground for my personal property rights and showing that I wasn't a pushover, I was left alone for the rest of my 3 years of junior high. I never got in another fight since the time I stood up for what was right. Have you ever been in a place like that? Well, the Christian thing to do is first, know that fighting is not the easy way out, and it'll cost you a price. Usually a bloody or broken nose like it cost me. But there is a time that you'll need to defend your honor, your family, and your nation. No one should look for a fight and have a fighting spirit, but remember, there's a time to stand up for what's morally right and defend it, even if it'll cost you your life. Captain Lewis and Clark were willing to die for the right to protect that water route from thieves, and in doing so, they made it safe for all those who would later use the Missouri to trade. Let me read a section of Hebrews chapter 11. It's verses 32 through 34. It says, "And what shall I say? I wish time would allow me to tell you of Gideon, of Barak, of Samson and Jephthah, of David, also of Samuel and the prophets, who, through faith, subdued kingdoms, wrought righteousness, obtained promises, stopped the mouths of lions, quenched the violence of fire, and escaped the edge of sword. Out of weakness were made strong, waxed valiant in fight, and turned to run the enemies of the armies that surrounded them." Be valiant for God and this great nation. Don't ever let sin and sinful bullies push you around. Be like the heroes of faith that we just read about in Hebrews chapter 11. It's time that this nation have a young group of people that'll stand up for the rights of godly, moral, biblical character that were once fought and died for in early America. I pray that Jesus makes you valiant.